Perdido Street Station by China Miéville. By the way, I've never heard his second name said out loud by anyone else. I think that's how you say it. I hope so. This was a second read for me. I originally read it maybe about 8 years ago, and I'm a more experienced reader now, and probably just as importantly, I'm also a more political person now. And so this reread was absolutely fantastic. So I actually wanted to make another video all about what books are left that are unfilmable. We've now had an amazing Dune adaptation, things like Cloud Atlas, even, Make Up for Giving was an amazing adaptation of something that people often said was unfilmable, and in the last couple of decades this has happened again and again. I've seen books that I love, the Dark Materials series, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, all of these books that are so complex and magical have made their way to film and TV. A lot of the reason for that is just that effects have gotten better. That isn't everything when it comes to deciding if something's filmable. But because of effects now, it seems like anything is possible, and I do kind of believe that there's no book out there that's unfilmable. But I do think there's something about Perdido Street Station that I think would make it difficult, or at least a big old challenge. Part of the reason for that is that we have a lot of creatures and different races that live in this world, and they're not explained only for us to focus in on sort of one set of human characters, although I guess that does happen sometimes. But these characters are brought up time and time again. They're a massive part of this city. You have the Khepri, who are human up to the neck, and then instead of a head, they have like a whole beetle body. Very cool. So one of our major characters, Lynn, is a Khepri. You have the Vodjanoi, who are these frog people. You have cactus people. You have the Garuda, who are big bird people. You have the Weremen, who are weird little gremlin things that go flying around. So you have a lot of weird creatures. And the Remade, who would be a challenge in themselves because they are effectively people that have had other body parts taken away, grafted to them. They could have like a snake for an arm. They could have, extra limbs added to their back, or they could have their legs replaced with something mechanical. So this is a very bizarre world. If you're not aware, this book is described as weird fiction, weird fantasy. It's basically, its genre is weird. So that alone, I think, would make things very difficult. But you also have some concepts in there that make things tricky. You have this. This is a minor spoiler. I'm sorry. If you don't want to hear about things that come in maybe midway in the book. I don't think there's a huge spoiler, but skip to this time if you don't want to hear it. But there is a spider, massive spider that is sort of like not of our dimension. It's sort of like cross-dimensional, and it cares about the weave of its web, but this web, I don't know, kind of occupies a space that humanity can't quite grasp. And you also have these moth monster creatures that absorb people's mind, and their wings are kind of described as being cross-dimensional, kind of like they don't behave in space in a proper way. So you have all this cross-dimensional stuff and these weird concepts that, you know, human minds aren't supposed to fully grasp. And then on top of that, you have these very strange mechanical scientific concepts. So the main character creates this engine that works completely in a sci-fi space that is very different and bizarre. So that's another element that makes it quite tricky. So you have all of these extra random elements. For me, it makes it very fun to be in a world where you can have a talking frog complaining to someone with a bug for a head. And to be honest, a lot of fantasy lately just features a lot of human characters. There's like a huge portion of the genre has sort of like done away with the concept of different races and beings, which is fine. You know, there's a lot of great fiction in that area, but sometimes kind of miss my fantasy races, and they're all here, you know, or at least a new batch of them are right here. So I have a lot of fun being in this strange space, but China Miéville doesn't forget about the importance of things like making good characters, good flawed characters. You know, if you're sick of reading about young, heroic people, this is the book for you, because the main character, Isaac, is this old scientist. He is in a relationship with a Khepri, which is seen as taboo. So they kind of hide their relationship, but they don't hide it from her artsy friends who are sort of like on the fringe of society. But he hides it from his fellow scientific buddies, and he definitely hides it from the people he knows at the university. You know, he's older, he's overweight, he's just about got a career, but it's mostly freelance, it's nothing special. And other than being very intelligent, he kind of isn't anything special. It really is that when a massive task is shown to him, he does step up to the plate, and it's really interesting to see. This is also a world of dodgy morals. You know, there is a lot of crime, but this is a political book, and so a lot of the bad things that happen to the city are either directly or indirectly caused by the government. Some of our heroes read this newspaper that is a underground newspaper, so underground that it has a hidden printing press below a slaughterhouse. You know, this is a world where the military rules. But what I quite like about this is that it's not banged over your head relentlessly, or at least I don't think it is. It feels very political, but there's plenty of room for other concepts and ideas in this book. There's still room to have a bit of fun. But I think the mistrust of the government is a huge driver for the characters doing what they do. You know, they don't feel like they can leave things to the government because they just don't trust them to do the right thing. And I think that's sort of like a great position, because it means you have characters that are really stuck because they seem like they're the only good people amongst dodgy politicians and crime lords. This is a huge book, as you can see, and I found that on a reread that I think I definitely preferred the first half. There's almost like it's almost split in two. You have this very long setup of the characters. So Isaac is approached by a Garuda, one of the bird people, who has had his wings removed, and he asks Isaac to help him fly. And this kickstarts a huge project. Isaac requests as many flying things as he can get his hands on. And the first half is mostly as living in this world and getting to know Isaac, getting to know the characters, and seeing the progress that he makes to figure out how to get this Garuda to fly. This has payoffs that you won't see coming. This is payoffs later, because there is a shift midway through the book as a crisis hits the city, as something major happens and Isaac has to drop everything to deal with it. So I won't say what that is, but the second half of the book is dealing with that crisis. So I think there's a little bit of a shift in pace. It's weird. I think because the first half is quite slow, and it's doing a lot of world building, I actually think I quite enjoyed that more than another 400 pages where it's crisis. I think maybe it was a little bit too much and could have done with maybe trimming down. I'm not sure. It's kind of tricky. I don't know if it's like an issue with the book or if I just needed to take my time with it a bit more as those things were dragging. But this is honestly just a nitpick. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 reading sessions where I was like, oh, okay, I feel like I'm ready to end this book now, only to then really get into the ending again. So yeah, it's an absolute nitpick. I love this world. I really do. I highly recommend it. And I'm really glad I've reread it now so that I can move on to the Scar and the other 2 books in this world, because it's been years since I read this and I've been meaning to try the Scar. I started it, I didn't get very far. So this is my effort to finally read the Scar, which is supposed to be really good as well. I'd also forgotten that the Iron Council was in the same universe as this one, so I had to buy that as well. I heard it's not as good as the first 2. And from what I've read, I suspect Perdido might be the best, but we'll see. If you've not read any of his stuff, by the way, I highly recommend. If you want a nice little gentle stepping on point, Rail C is good. I think that was his attempt at a YA book. The concept of that is it's a sea. The sea is the desert, where think like dune sandworms, so stepping on the desert is dangerous, and so people traverse it on railways. But it's this kind of this feeling of pirates on the sea, but it's a desert. It's very cool. I've spoken about the city in the city before, and it's a very weird concept. That's a cool one to jump on if you want to start with a shorter one. But if you're brave enough to just go, jump in, experience some weird fiction, you gotta try Perdido Street Station. It's so good. I also recommend it if you like Arcane or Disco Elysium. I think there's a lot of the political feeling in Disco Elysium that vibes with a lot of stuff in here. So if you really like Disco Elysium, and you kind of want that with a lot of weird sci-fi fantasy stuff thrown on top, this is the book for you. I think that'll do it, because even though it's such a big book, I obviously don't want to give too much away. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any China Miéville or if you've read Perdido Street Station. And hopefully you'll join me again for another video. I'll see you soon. Bye!